buoyant force. It's making itself lighter than air is another way to describe it. And, this makes sense. It's creating a high pressure zone under the rocket, and the rocket simply floats on that high pressure zone. As the rocket gets up, the ideal nozzle, let's say the rocket's at sea level, the ideal nozzle is like this. And, there's enough friction in the air to provide, there's enough density of air to provide buoyancy with a nozzle that big. Now, as you get higher up in the atmosphere, the density of air is less. The angle of the nozzle has to increase, and you can Google this, rocket nozzle altitude. Just Google that and you'll see this. The higher you get up, the lower the density of the air, and the wider the nozzle has to be able to provide enough force, enough buoyant force in that low density air. Now, if you take this to the extreme, space, where the density of air is incredibly low, that nozzle would have to be infinitely wide, which is obviously impossible. And that is just simple physics. I mean, rocket scientists should know that simple fact. And they're very intellectually dishonest because they create a disconnect in their mind. They're like, yeah, on Earth, rocket nozzles have to be bigger the higher you get. But once you're in space, rocket nozzle doesn't matter. It's like, well, why would there be a disconnect? If the air pressure down here is 100, the air pressure here is 10, you need a wider nozzle up here to actually go, or else the rocket's just going to fall down. What about when the density is 1? Do you need a huger nozzle, more wider nozzle? Yes. How about when the density is 0? How big does your nozzle have to be? Infinitely large. And they just blank that out of their mind. They just don't think about it. And there's a good reason they don't have to think about it. And that is because they don't send rockets into space. All they do is the farthest they've ever sent. They have never gotten anything out of Earth's orbit. Sure, the orbit might have been very big, but they've never gotten anything out of Earth's orbit. It's impossible. It's impossible to get anything out of Earth's orbit because you would need the mass greater than the Earth. You would need to launch, even if you launch the Earth backwards, like, the two things would still be orbiting each other, you know what I mean? Like if I were in space and I threw a ball, no matter how hard I threw that ball and I are still in the same system. You cannot leave the system. So, I think that about explains it. I think I've covered about everything. Rockets are designed to work in air. Okay? If you don't have air, rockets don't work. If you put a rocket underwater, most rockets won't work. I mean, you can. Some, specially designed rockets could work underwater, but rockets are designed to work in air. There is no rocket designed to work in space because a rocket designed to work in space would have an infinitely large nozzle. That is all that I can think of. I am the nature hacker. Do work.